What would it look like if men, spiritually leading, had a better understanding of justice, judgment, and anger? That's what we're talking about today on The Outpost. Come on.
All right, so I'm going to lead this because of my own struggles with judgment. So my question to you, Mark, will lead with, what would it look like if God applied the standards that I apply in judging people to me?
To judging me?
To judging me.
That's not easy. That's not fun. That doesn't feel good, does it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole different standard. God knows we love to judge, but we hate being judged. Am I right?
You're right.
Do you know anybody that loves being judged?
Nope.
I don't. Nope. But yet we judge over and over and over again.
Yeah, right on.
So just for those joining in, whether you've seen the first part or not, tell us a little bit about what you're doing with 70 times 7, just to frame.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. We're in our 10th year, 70 times 7 path to forgiveness. And although forgiveness is part of it, we deal with judgment, reconciliation, shame, blame, self-worth, basically the infection of the wound of unforgiveness. And hopefully today we're going to cover the connection between judgment and forgiveness, that the more forgiving you are, the less judgmental you are. The less judgmental you are, the more forgiving you are, and the connection between them. And so there's actually, there's a science to forgiveness to it. A lot of people think of it as just strictly biblical, just forgive, or just what we've taught about ask an apology. There's actually thousands and thousands of studies. One of the leading clinical psychologists, a Christian individual by the name of Dr. Everett Worthington, when you say wrote the book, 48 different published books on this is on our team. And so we've been studying for a long time of what's the science to the judgment, how do we click, and what are the actions and reactions that it causes in our relationships. That's what 70 times 7 is all about.
Wow.
Man, we need that. 70 times 7.
We're soaking it up. So let's be clear on the definition. So let's cover judgment, justice, and anger from a definition perspective. Give it to us more.
Sure, and I would love to cover mercy as well, if it's okay with you. Please. So, look, particularly judgment and justice, often they're confused and they're conflated in between. So judgment is a forming of opinion after great thought. Right? That I am judging something to be right or wrong. And judgment itself is not necessarily bad until it's overdone. I mean, Psalms 119, 66 tells us, teach me wisdom and good judgment. If your child is reaching for a hot stove, is it not good to judge them doing wrong and get in the middle of it? Of course. So not all judgment is bad. The issue is what we overly judge, and we'll get into that. Justice is the administering of punishment or release from punishment, administering of punishment after judgment has been made. It's the administration of the punishment. Judgment is forming opinion. Justice is making the payment for it. Okay? Mercy is withdrawing. It's the opposite of the justice in the sense that it is a pulling back. Instead of getting the punishment that you need is say, you're wrong, but I am not going to provide any punishment to it. I'm going to have mercy on you.
And anger?
Anger is so much as a result of underlying issues. If you think about it, and that's what I'm really hoping we're going to get into, is anger comes from many different sources, but more times than not, the source of it is a judging. If you think about it for a second, if you never judge anything wrong to be wrong, which I'm not suggesting is a good idea, but if nothing ever bothered you to judge to be wrong, what have I got to be angry about?
Yeah.
So I'd like to make that connection into it, is that anger often is just an outward expression for you did wrong, and sometimes I did wrong, angry at myself, right? But a wrong has been done, I am angry.
Is it a reaction to a perceived lack of justice?
The perceived lack, a judgment, and then the justice. Okay, so it is something. Particularly is something we like justice, right? We talked about that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Did we not find comfort and excitement that a car comes whizzing past you and you come around the next corner and there's the cop got him pulled over and the big smile on your face, ha ha ha, justice, right? We love the justice, even in the scales of it, and that judging. And so we judge others. We're constantly judging. And so that causes anger. If I may, I'd like to show you a connection between them. Are you okay with that?
Yeah. Sure.
Blame. We love to blame, right? Go ahead and turn on the news. I don't care which side of the political spectrum that you're on, or whether you're a CNN fan or a Fox News fan. Watch the news, and they love to play into the blame. They're wrong, they're wrong, they're wrong. Nonstop blame. And how do you think that God feels about that blame? Because the blame actually, by Brene Brown, one of the phenomenal, if you follow any of her work on shame and self-worth, is she so eloquently says that blame is the discharge of anger. Blame is the discharge of anger. And when we get angry, we blame. So when we get that anger, we got to find somebody in order to blame for it. But here's the interesting thing through 70 times 7 through over the last 10 years is what we've uncovered is anger is the discharge of judgment. Anger is the discharge of judgment. And so just like a set of dominoes that an injustice happened, right? Somebody did you wrong, did a family loved one wrong, that in society, those people, them, the others did wrong. And so what happens? Then I judge it to be wrong. And with that judgment to be wrong, I get angry. And when I angry, I blame. And then all the negative emotions and feelings come as a result of that. If you want to get rid of the negative feelings, then blame less. If you want less blame, have less anger. If you want to have less anger, be less judgmental.
Wow. Can you unpack that again? Just
Sure.
what you said, those three
set of
summary
dominoes.
statements.
That set of dominoes. If you want to have less negative feelings, hurts into it, that you, if you want to have less blame in your life, if you want to have less blame, be less angry. Easy to say, right? And if you want to have less anger, be less judgmental. Go through a process of judgmental detox. I work with people that are highly judgmental, which it shows up in their marriage and others with anger management problems, right?
Wow.
We've all heard that anger management problem.
Yeah,
and there's all sorts of people.
Judgment.
Go look on ChatGPT what to do with anger management. Good luck. What it's going to give you. So many people got all these different ways of doing it. For me, I'd rather just cut off the source, the judgment. Right? That if you can go through judgment, so just every day going around, and every time I judge, I can't believe that really, Scott, that hat, doing this.
Oh, man.
About to show his anger too.
Oh, no. Here we go.
Right.
He's going to blame me for something.
Judge things to be wrong over and over again. They were wrong, right? Over and over again. If you just went through the course of your day, don't change it. Just recognize how many times you judge others to be wrong, right? I can't believe they smoke pot. I can't believe they don't have prayer time every time in the morning. Okay? And you'd be surprised at the end of the day, your shoulders are tired. Your shoulders are tired. And so anger, judgment detox will change your life, but it takes work and it takes acknowledging into it. But then it'll reduce the anger, which reduces the blame, which results in better relationships, a happier life and joy. Just like Jesus. Remember, Jesus said, I didn't come to the world to judge it. I came to save it. And here we are. We're saying, I can judge. I watch the news. I'm judging them to be wrong. I'm judging them wrong. I can't believe that hat. Sorry, Scott. Got to have a little fun with you. I judge you to be wrong.
We'll never see that hat again.
Never.
See, Jesus didn't come to the world to
Overboard.
judge it, but I can.
Yeah. Isn't that funny?
Even Jesus acknowledged it was the Father's job.
Yeah.
I'm going to come back to that, but where does discernment fit in all this?
It's a discernment. Remember back, let's go back to Psalms 1966. Teach me good judgment. And I wish I could tell you there's a really clear line into it. And I'd be telling you a big lie. That line is fuzzy. Okay. So we should have good judgment, discernment.
That's
judgment.
what to you, that means good judgment.
Good judgment.
Okay. All right.
That's correct.
Yeah.
When I think of discernment, I think it is good judgment. But keep in mind is that's where our perception, we don't believe what we see what we believe. Okay? So if you are constantly consuming only from one source or another, then you are going to see things only through those eyes. And it gives us credibility that to say it's okay that I can judge because I know I've got the truth.
Yeah.
Well, you've only got part of it. You don't have God's truth.
Yeah.
So we have to leave God to be the judge. I just want to share with us, right? Go to John 12:47 here. As for the person who hears my words, right? We hear the word, right? But don't keep them. I do not judge him, for I did not come to the world to judge, but to save it. Those are Jesus' words, right? So we want to judge. But here's where I love this. This is when we get into Romans 2. This is gold. You therefore have no excuse. You got no excuse. You who pass judgment on someone else, for whatever you point to judge the other, you're condemning yourself. And I want to switch over to verse number 3 now. Move forward. So when you, a mere human being, I just love that sense right there. You, a mere human being, we think we know the truth because we consumed just certain parts of it. And so it gives us the right to judge others as being, when you, a mere human being, pass judgment on them and yet do the same things, do you think that you're going to escape God's judgment? Back to that again. We love to judge. We hate being judged.
Boy, that's for sure.
One of my teachers used to say that when you're angry, it distills fear. You cannot be fearful when you're angry because the anger basically
Overrides
it. Anger allows you to rise up over fear.
Righteous anger. Well, I'll even go as far as
It doesn't have to be righteous.
righteous anger.
Yeah. Anger's anger.
I understand, but how many times in Christian circles that in being judgmental, they immediately try and find a verse in Matthew in order to justify that.
Yeah.
When they're angry, righteous anger, they immediately go to Jesus. Even Jesus did, and it gives them the right in order to have that righteous anger. They seek that of which, and if you take the verses out of context, if you take it out of the entire context, you'll get it wrong. Listen, I want to tell you guys, Luke 21:18, you know what it says?
Tell us.
Not a hair on your head shall perish. Now, if I took that verse out of context,
Yeah.
is the Bible a lie? Because a lot of hairs have perished on top of this here head, okay?
That's right. That's right.
So we have to be careful about taking that out of context. So often in order to justify righteous anger and other than, they immediately want to go there and say, even Jesus had righteous anger into it.
There's kind of this tension between legalism and grace.
Bang, exactly.
It's this tension between being right and staying in relationship.
Yeah.
There's so many things, grace and the focus on relationship should keep us out of judgment. They should tamp down anger, but they don't, which kind of leads me to what's behind this cycle? Is it unmet expectations? Are people responding to their wounds that are sore? Are we ultimately acting out of selfishness when we kind of loop into this cycle? There are lots of things that drive this cycle. How do you see that? What drives the cycle?
So let's take from the spiritual and from the way that we are wired, hair trigger.
Okay.
Back to it again. I see something bad has happened in the world to me, to a loved one. That instant stress and coping that followed by appraisal and need for justice. That's how we're wired. Okay? And from a spiritual point of view, though, is what we should wire is instead of showing mercy and showing love. Mm-hmm. You don't stop hate with hate. Mm-hmm. You stop hate with love, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. It's shown over and over and over again in wars that they did that, so now we got to come back and we got to punish them and we got to punish them and punish them. In a never-ending cycle.
In my house growing up, two emotions were allowed: anger or happiness.
Wow!
And so I want to come back to your comment about fear and anger. Like, we as men, are we like we're not comfortable with a lot of emotions, and so when we're fearful, that may show up as, is that where you were going with the fear? Yeah. And think about all the others. When you're sad, and the only two options are anger or happiness, what are you going to be? Like, everything that's not a positive emotion shows up as anger. I mean, it's such a primitive emotion.
And with anger, we can clear a room. With anger, we can end a conversation. Mm-hmm. With anger, we can end a rebut. If someone's arguing or rebuttal against us.
Yeah. It trumps everything.
It kind of trumps everything, but the extreme anger, you would call it bullying, but I kind of want to suss out, anger is backed by fear. Anger is backed by judgment. Anger is backed by unmet expectations. Anger is ultimately backed by blame. You're looking for something, justice.
Mark, is that right? Sound right?
Yeah, it's right smack dab. The anger is right between blame and judgment, right? The more we blame, the more we get angry, the more we're judgmental, the more we get angry and causes blame. Absolutely.
So tell me what's it going to take for us to unwire and rewire for mercy rather than justice, for grace rather than this whole concept of what is deserved and what is earned, for being hospitable and welcoming and magnanimous rather than being stingy and conditional. How do we change our wiring?
It starts off with a desire. Do you want to continue to be angry? Do you want to keep carrying around that backpack of resentment and blame? Because I do. I do meet people that want to.
Oh yeah.
Right? They want to hang on to it.
Yeah.
And you know what? There's not a whole lot I can do to help them. Right? And they feel righteous by it. Right? I read the Bible. I go to church. They are wrong, and I got the right in order to be angry on it and blame them. I've got the right to. And they continue hanging that. Have you met those people?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I
think I'm one of those people. This? Yeah, I think I'm one of those people.
Where have you seen that, what you just described, where have you seen that most commonly?
For me? In church circles. I'll give you a little science back on this, okay? And the data shows that as a Christian community, on trait forgiveness, as overall, we score higher than non-believers. On state forgiveness, on that one particular item, we score very slightly above others as well. 25% of us are still holding on to something that we can't let go. We wear the mask because we got to show up that we've got it all together and we're good Christians. And it shows up into this judgment. I'm judging myself to what I did wrong. I'm judging them to be wrong. And I can't let that go. There's got to be justice because I've judged it, and I have to have justice instead of leaving the hands in the judge. And so what happens is you'll see it in the sense that those people are focused more on the law of sin than the love of the Son. They're focused on the law of sin rather than the love of the Son, right? And they got every right to.
You know, Tim, when he says that, I come back to why we're sitting here. We want a place safe enough and welcoming enough and open-handed enough for relationship and access, rather than being right. And like you think about the one of the pains we're trying to lance is, why is it that so many guys go it alone or outside of community? It's that they can't find it. They never experienced it. Or when they did experience it, it came back void and it wasn't good enough. It came back void and it was, that's not going to cut it here. Or you can't, or you shouldn't. I think that's just, as we're sitting here and always going back to our why, like we want to have a place where it's so safe and it's so accepting, and that, you know, we're not judging. He's the judge. We're loving. We're welcoming. Going back to the question, are there places where you saw that dynamic as well? That pain dynamic, the anger dynamic.
So for me, God has delivered me from the anger. So when I look at this movement, I don't struggle with anger, but I struggle with judgment. And it comes from growing up in a home where whatever you did wasn't good enough. Like it's like you're never gonna. Didn't matter what we achieved. Me and my brothers achieved an awful lot. And I think it was a strategy. I don't think it was nefarious. It was like, if I ever let them be comfortable, then they won't achieve what they could have if I kept them uncomfortable. That was very much it. So now I'm in a position in my 60s where I'm really hypercritical of myself. And I struggle with, how do I not apply that same level of judgment? It really is. You're judging everybody's scrutiny. Like how, and it's not judgment in that person's going to hell, but just that person falls short of what they could be, and almost shame on them. What a horrible way to live.
Absolutely.
Thoughts on getting to the bottom of that?
Yeah, a number of different things. One is, just want to appeal to anybody that's listening to this, that's struggling with this one particular part, and then it shows up in self-worth, right? All this is very much connected into it. That a fear of failure and a fear of success. And the website 70x7.org, 70x7.org. Click under Assistance and Self-Worth. There's a 6-part audio series where we get into great depth as to where the source of that is from.
Awesome.
And what to do about it and how to change. And that, so that's a great resource. But it really comes down to this is, look, if we want to be more like Jesus, right? And we don't like to be judged, but we love to judge, right? And let's go to that mercy part. Remember, now justice is the administering of punishment for what they did. Mercy is not administering the punishment of which they did, right? Just the other side of it.
Yep.
Mercy. When we do wrong, we love to ask for mercy. And interesting enough, the study shows that when we do wrong, somebody has done you wrong, and how you perceive it is bigger and worse than what had actually happened. The person who did wrong, how they perceive it is not as bad as what it is. And so if we're waiting for an exchange to come back, right, that they need to work because it exceeds more, we're expecting more. And it comes back like this: Scott owes me $80,000. And finally, Scott says, hey, I'm sorry, Mark, here's $12. Now I'm getting really angry because you have really diminished. In your mind, that was a $12 thing. From my mind, it's an $80,000 thing, and it just stirs it up. So back to I'm judging that. And so that's a tie-in between the forgiveness and the judgment. And in order to have mercy, I can write that debt off. And you don't know, and he shows up with $12. That's new revenue. Hey, thanks. I get to go out to lunch. I already wrote that debt off. That's new revenue. Hey, thanks. That's awesome. So let's say mercy, 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 because judgment, well, I'm in James 2, by the way. Because judgment without mercy will be shown to anyone who has not been merciful. Mercy triumphs over judgment. Mercy triumphs over judgment. So if you want to have a happy life, if you want to have a happy wife, if you want to have happier employees and happier neighbors around you, try to stop being a mercy receiver as much as being a mercy giver. If as a Christian community, we would be known not as the judgmental people, but as the mercy givers,
Amen.
how many more people would come to know the Lord? Amen. Mercy givers.
So I want to ask a question. We've talked about judgment and mercy giving, and I totally agree with you, but I want to kind of pull the lens a little bit back further, the aperture, if you will. So when we judge, we are literally then stepping into God's role.
Absolutely.
We are moving from angel, a saint that sometimes sins, into the God seat when we judge, because we know better. We're changing seats. So what do we do to recognize this in ourselves and to stop it? How do we stay in our seat as a saint that sometimes sins, as an angel, as opposed to, nope, I'm jumping, I'm going to move to the God seat. I know better.
That's good. It starts with just recognizing it. And that's why I love to do the raise the right arm part. Every time you judge somebody, as silly as it is, I judge, right? I was making fun of the hat. I just judge. I do love your hat, by the way. But I'm being silly. I know. But how many times in the course of a day that you're judging, right? Especially if you're on social media or watching the news, over and over and over again, and just recognize that. And remember now, teach me good judgment. And so where is that it's like serving God, serving my family, serving me well? Okay? But first, you just got to recognize how many that you do it. And if you go through judgment detox, you would be surprised. And I mentioned before about this young man that I talked to some time ago about cutting off an anger management problem. All we did was have him do judgment. A month later, he called me and said, "Oh my goodness, my wife can't believe the difference in how my anger management." And my advice to him is, don't work on the anger management. Only work on the judgment. Wow. And that cut off the valve, what was feeding the anger management problem. And his wife has noticed.
So we are now concluding part 1 of this second series about judgment, justice, and anger. We're going to come back in a few minutes and talk about the impact all of this has on our relationship with God, how it keeps us from Him, right here on The Outpost.